And to say that it's rare that I disagree at all with my colleague from East Anchorage, Shaber, whose legal acumen, he's the man who argued the case all the way to the Supreme Court, Wielechowski, to defend the dividend in the Wielechowski versus State of Alaska, or Walker, I think it might have been. I want to just talk about two reasons why I support the amendment proposed by the senator from Sitka. And the first reason goes to the heart of the discussion of all the letters and things that we've received. In the nearly 6,000 emails that have come into my office, roughly, now just roughly 60 of them supported a full dividend. And I think that number's worth repeating, 6,000 to 60. If there's anything that's come out of this second special session and the governor's vetoes, is Alaskans finally taking a look, Madam President, at what the future should look like. Observing that this amendment doesn't remove a dividend. This amendment seeks to sustain a dividend for the long run until we do rationally come up with a solution, whether it's constitutional or whether it's a new formula. My colleague is correct that we must do something at some point where we give satisfaction to the people of Alaska into what we intend with this dividend. But in the meantime, we have an obligation to provide the constitutional services that this state must provide. And what those 5,000, roughly 940 other emails have told me, those letters that I've received, the phone calls that have come into my office, is that people have a vision of what that Alaska looks like. That Alaska provides for pre-kindergarten, it provides for senior services, it provides a University of Alaska that is meaningful, it provides for homeless funding to address our mental health and substance use issues. It provides for an image of Alaska that those coming after us can believe in, can have hope about, that provides opportunity. This is not the end of the dividend happening here. This is a discussion similar to discussions in prior years that I hope will force us to the final conclusion as to what will be a fair formula for the dividend that will sustain it in the long run, while also moving us to a future that is sustainable for all the other services that we provide that our people are telling us they support. The second reason is something I've told my colleagues in my caucus and some of your colleagues in your caucus and to those in the other body, as well as the citizens who I've responded to. Fundamentally, if we do not build the permanent fund dividend to a place where it will offset oil and gas revenue, we do not have a future in this state that will be sustainable. We must build that permanent fund itself. In the end, that's a balance. It's a balance of how much we draw from the fund. It's a balance of how much we pay out in a dividend, but it's also important that we capitalize the fund. Because if, as my colleague from East Anchorage says, it will produce an average of 6.5% annually, that becomes the percentage that offsets an absolute decline in oil. I've made speeches on the floor of this body about the changing nature of our world. There are now 5 Western states that have said that they're going to go carbon neutral or carbon neutral or carbon zero by the end of 2050. That has a direct impact on our future. We have to be thinking about a renewable resource, and the permanent fund represents that. This amendment is one step in ensuring that we get to a meaningful discussion of what that dividend ought to be in the long run, in a way that also ensures we have a future that provides basic services. That's why I support this amendment, because I think that's what it does for us, Madam President. I would add that I have spoken many times also on this floor in support of my colleague from East Anchorage's desire to see a reduction in oil and gas tax credits. And I tie that directly to this conversation, because we would not be having this conversation today if even half of those credits were gone, because there would be $500 million more coming in tax revenue to this state at a minimum. But we didn't take that action, and we haven't. What we have focused on is what is the vision of an Alaska that all of us can come together around. And that vision means those services I described, a permanent fund that is sustainable in the long run, and a dividend that is still paid to Alaskans. So with all of those reasons, I would just say I'm in support of the amendment proposed by the member from Sitka.